Have you ever faced someone whose inflated ego blocks progress, creates conflict, or stands in your way? Their arrogance seems impenetrable, but what if you could dismantle it with precision, using their own pride against them? In this script, we will unravel the art of breaking anyone's ego, employing cunning strategies inspired by the master of manipulation, Niccolò Machiavelli. By the end, you'll hold the keys to unraveling even the most fortified sense of self. Greetings, seekers of power and influence. I am your guide through the shadowed corridors of human nature, where pride reigns and egos falter. Today, we embark on a journey inspired by the timeless wisdom of Niccolò Machiavelli, whose ruthless pragmatism teaches us to wield the mind as a weapon. Our quest is to master the art of breaking an ego, not with brute force, but with the subtle, devastating precision of a strategist. Whether it's a rival, a foe, or a friend grown too proud, you will learn to unravel their self-assured facade and bend them to your will. Let us begin. Welcome, strategists, to the dark art of influence, where we peel back the layers of human nature to reveal its most fragile core. Today, we're diving deep into the first key to breaking anyone's ego, understanding it as a weakness. Picture this: you're facing someone whose arrogance fills the room like a storm cloud, their confidence a towering wall that seems unbreakable. But here's the secret, the one Niccolò Machiavelli himself would whisper in your ear. That wall is built on sand. The ego, for all its bluster, is a house of cards waiting for the right breeze to topple it. Let's unravel this together, and by the end, you'll see every puffed-up chest and smug grin for what they truly are: opportunities. Imagine you're at a meeting, and there's that one person who can't stop talking about their achievements. Their voice drips with self-assurance, every word a monument to their greatness. You might think this person is untouchable, but pause and look closer. That need to boast, that hunger for applause, it's not strength. It's a crack in their armor. The ego is a paradox. It presents itself as a shield, but it's really a target. Why? Because it's rooted in insecurity. The louder someone proclaims their worth, the more they're begging for validation. And that, my friends, is where you begin to take control. Let's break it down. The ego is like a balloon, shiny, impressive, floating high above everyone else. But what happens when you prick it? It doesn't just deflate, it bursts. Machiavelli, the master of human nature, knew this. He understood that people are driven by pride, but pride is a double-edged sword. It makes them predictable. It makes them vulnerable. When someone's ego is at the helm, they're not thinking clearly. They're chasing admiration, dodging criticism, and terrified of being exposed as less than they claim. Your job is to see through the facade and spot the levers you can pull. Think about someone in your life right now. Maybe it's a coworker who always needs to be the smartest in the room, or a friend who can't handle a single critique without spiraling. Watch them closely. Notice how they react when praised. Do their eyes light up? Do they lean in, craving more? Now, notice what happens when they're challenged. Do they get defensive, quick to snap back? Or do they retreat into silence, nursing their wounded pride? These reactions are your map. Every boast, every flare of anger, every desperate grab for attention is a signpost pointing to their weakness. You're not just observing. You're gathering intelligence, like a general before a battle. Machiavelli would tell you that power comes from understanding your opponent better than they understand themselves. The ego, driven person is blind to their own flaws because they're too busy polishing their image. They don't see the chinks in their armor, but you do. Maybe it's the way they fish for compliments after a presentation, or how they bristle when someone else gets the spotlight. These aren't just quirks, they're the keys to their undoing. The ego isn't a fortress, it's a trap they've set for themselves. Your job is to spring it. Let's get practical. Say you're dealing with a boss who thinks they're infallible. They strut into meetings, tossing out orders, dismissing ideas that aren't theirs. You might feel small in their shadow, but don't. Their need to dominate is their weakness. They're not commanding respect, they're demanding it, and that's a crucial difference. A truly confident person doesn't need to prove their worth every 5 seconds. The ego-driven do, and that's where you strike. You don't confront them head on, that's what they expect. Instead, you study their patterns. Do they interrupt to assert dominance? Do they fish for praise by recounting their successes? Each move they make is a clue, a thread you can pull to unravel their carefully crafted image. Here's where it gets fun. The ego isn't just fragile, it's predictable. People with big egos follow patterns as old as time. They crave admiration, fear humiliation, and overestimate their own brilliance. Sound familiar? It's the colleague who takes credit for the team's work, the rival who can't stand being outshone, the friend who turns every conversation back to themselves. These aren't random traits, they're the ego's fingerprints. And once you learn to spot them, you can anticipate their moves. You know they'll leap at flattery, so you offer it strategically. You know they'll crumble under subtle doubt, so you plant it carefully. You're not just reacting, you're orchestrating. Let's paint a picture. Imagine you're at a social gathering, and there's that one guy who's holding court, regaling everyone with tales of his brilliance. The crowd is eating it up, but you see the truth. He's not telling stories, he's begging for worship. His ego is a house built on the applause of others. Take that away, or even hint at taking it away, and the whole thing collapses. You don't need to shout him down or outshine him. You just need to understand that his need for the spotlight is his Achilles heel. A well-placed question, a subtle shift of attention, and you can make him squirm without anyone noticing your hand in it. This is the beauty of Machiavelli's approach. It's not about force, it's about finesse. The ego is a weakness because it's a hunger that can never be satisfied. Feed it, starve it, twist it. You're the one in control. So, as you move through the world, start watching. See the egos around you for what they are, not walls, but windows. Windows into the fears, desires, and insecurities that drive people. Once you see that, you're not just playing the game, you're writing the rules. Welcome back, cunning minds, to the next layer of our Machiavellian masterclass. You've learned to spot the ego's fragility, to see it as the shaky foundation it truly is. Now, let's sharpen our tools and dive into the second key to breaking anyone's ego: strategic flattery and deception. This is where the game gets deliciously subtle. Picture yourself as a puppeteer, pulling invisible strings to inflate someone's pride until it's ripe for the fall. Niccolò Machiavelli, the maestro of manipulation, knew that flattery is no mere compliment, it's a weapon, cloaked in velvet, that can make even the mightiest ego vulnerable. Let's unravel this art and learn how to wield it with precision, engaging your target's vanity while keeping your true intentions hidden in the shadows. Imagine you're facing someone whose ego towers over every conversation. They thrive on praise, their confidence fed by the admiration of others. You could challenge them directly, but that's a fool's game. Machiavelli would scoff at such bluntness. Instead, you offer them something they can't resist: flattery. Not the clumsy, over-the-top kind that raises suspicion, but the kind that slips under their defenses like a whisper. This is strategic flattery, calculated, tailored, and delivered with the finesse of a seasoned diplomat. You're not just stroking their ego, you're inflating it, making it so bloated that it becomes brittle, ready to crack under the slightest pressure. Let's set the scene. You're dealing with a colleague who fancies themselves the office genius. Every meeting is their stage, every idea a masterpiece, or so they think. Your instinct might be to roll your eyes or call them out, but hold that urge. Instead, lean in. Tell them, "I was just saying to someone how your insights always cut through the noise." Watch their face light up, their chest puff out. That's not just satisfaction you're seeing, it's vulnerability. By feeding their ego, you've disarmed them. They're no longer watching you for threats. They're basking in your words, blind to the trap you're setting. This is the essence of deception. You give them what they want, but on your terms. Machiavelli taught us that people are ruled by their desires, and the ego's greatest desire is to be seen as exceptional. Flattery taps into that like nothing else. But here's the key: it has to feel real. Generic compliments like "you're amazing" won't cut it. They're too obvious, too cheap. You need to be specific, surgical. If your target prides themselves on their creativity, say something like, "The way you connected those ideas in the last project was something I've never seen before." If they crave power, hint at their influence. People really look to you to set the direction here. These words aren't just praise, they're bait. They draw your target in, making them feel invincible, even as you're coiling the rope around their ego. Now, let's talk deception. Flattery alone is powerful, but it's the deception behind it that makes it deadly. You're not praising them because you mean it. You're praising them because it serves your purpose. Every word you choose is a step in a larger dance. You're building their trust, lowering their guard, and setting the stage for the moment when you pull back or twist the knife. The beauty of this approach is that they never see it coming. They're too busy soaking in your admiration to notice the strings you're pulling. Machiavelli would nod in approval. The best deceptions are the ones where the target thinks they're in control. Picture this in action. You're at a social event and there's someone dominating the conversation, fishing for compliments with every story they tell. You don't compete for attention, that's what they want. Instead, you lean forward and say, "I heard someone mention your name the other day, saying you're the a person for this kind of thing." They'll eat it up, their ego swelling like a balloon, but you're not done. You keep it up, feeding them just enough to keep them hungry for more. Maybe you add, "I was telling a friend about that deal you closed. Nobody else could have pulled that off." They're hooked now, their guard down, their ego ripe for the next phase of your plan. The trick is balance. Too much flattery and you risk looking like a sycophant. Too little and you don't hook them. It's like seasoning a dish. Just enough to enhance, not overwhelm. And always keep your true intentions hidden. You're not their friend, you're their strategist. Every compliment is a chess move, positioning them exactly where you want them. Maybe it's for a later critique that stings all the more because they trusted you. Maybe it's to make them overconfident, so they overreach and fail. Whatever the goal, your flattery is the bait and your deception is the hook. This is where you start to feel the power. You're not just reacting to their ego, you're shaping it. You're making them feel larger than life, but only so you can control the moment when they fall. Machiavelli knew that the most dangerous weapons are the ones that feel like gifts. So, as you move through your world, start practicing. Find someone whose ego is loud and proud and test your skills. Offer a compliment that hits their sweet spot, then watch how they respond. You'll see the strings of their ego start to show, ready for you to pull. Welcome back, my cunning apprentices, to the next move in our Machiavellian playbook. You've learned to spot the ego's cracks and inflate it with flattery until it's teetering on the edge. Now we step into the shadows for the third key to breaking anyone's ego, creating doubt and insecurity. This is where the game turns sharp, where you take that swollen pride and prick it with the precision of a master strategist. Niccolò Machiavelli knew that the mind is its own worst enemy, and with a few well-laced words, you can turn someone's confidence into a battlefield of self-doubt. Let's dive in and learn how to plant those seeds of uncertainty, engaging your target's insecurities while keeping your hands clean. Picture this: you're dealing with someone who struts through life like they're untouchable. Their ego is a blazing sun, and they expect everyone to orbit around it. You've already softened them up with flattery, making them feel invincible, but now it's time to shift the ground beneath them. The goal isn't to attack outright. Machiavelli would call that reckless. Instead, you're going to whisper doubts into their mind, subtle enough to slip past their defenses, but sharp enough to sting. This is about making them question themselves, turning their own thoughts into your weapon. It's psychological warfare at its finest, and you're the one calling the shots. Let's set the scene. You're working with a colleague who's convinced they're the star of every project. They bask in praise, but you've noticed how they bristle when anyone suggests a better idea. That's your opening. You don't need to challenge them head on. That's what they're ready for. Instead, you drop a comment so casual it feels like an afterthought. Your approach is solid. You might say, pausing just long enough to let the word linger. But I heard someone mention another angle that might be worth a glance. You're not criticizing, you're just planting a seed. Their ego, already puffed up from your earlier flattery, starts to wobble. Did they miss something? Are they not as flawless as they thought? Machiavelli's genius was in understanding that people are their own worst critics. You don't need to tear them down. You just need to nudge their mind toward the cliff. A well-timed question can do more damage than a shouting match. Try this. I love how bold your plan is. Did you consider how it'll play out if things shift unexpectedly? On the surface, it's innocent, even supportive. But underneath, it's a spark of doubt, igniting questions they can't ignore. What if they didn't think it through? What if someone else sees a flaw they missed? You're not accusing them of anything. You're just letting their own insecurities do the work. Let's take it to a social setting. Imagine you're at a gathering, and there's that one person who's always the loudest, the one who thinks they're the life of the party. You've already fed their ego with a few well-laced compliments, and now they're practically glowing. Time to dim that light. You might say your stories always get everyone going, though I noticed someone mentioned you might have told that one before. It's subtle, almost forgettable, but it lands like a dart. Suddenly, they're wondering if they're repetitive, if people are whispering behind their back. You haven't said anything harsh, but you've cracked their confidence just enough to make them second guess. The beauty of this tactic is its invisibility. You're not the villain, you're just a bystander offering a passing thought. Machiavelli would approve, the best moves are the ones where your hand is unseen. You might compare their work to someone else's, but not in a way that feels like a challenge. Your presentation was great. You could say, it reminded me of how Sarah tackled that project last month. On the surface, it's a compliment, but it plants a question. Are they as original as they think? Are they being compared unfavorably? Their ego starts to churn, and you're nowhere near the blame. Timing is everything here. You don't want to pile on too much too soon. That's how you get caught. Instead, space out your comments, letting each one simmer in their mind. Maybe you mention a minor oversight in a meeting, then a week later, you casually wonder if their approach is the best fit for the team's goals. Each remark is a pebble in their shoe, small but impossible to ignore. Over time, their confidence erodes, not because you attacked them, but because you've turned their own mind against them. This is where you start to see the power of doubt. It's not about proving them wrong. It's about making them doubt themselves. A person with a big ego is already halfway there. They're so obsessed with being perfect that any hint of imperfection feels like a crisis. You're just giving them a nudge. Maybe you ask, are you sure that's the best way to go? I only ask because you always aim so high. It sounds like concern, but it's a blade cutting at their self-image. They'll lie awake at night, replaying your words, wondering if they're slipping. Welcome back, my fellow architects of influence, to the fourth pillar of our Machiavellian journey to dismantle ego. You've learned to spot its weaknesses, inflate it with flattery, and sow seeds of doubt that make it tremble. Now, we step into the heart of true power with a lesson straight from Niccolò Machiavelli's playbook, maintaining control through detachment. This is where you become untouchable, a master strategist who wields influence without ever getting tangled in the emotional webs that ensnare others. Imagine yourself as a chess grandmaster, moving pieces with cold precision while your opponent, blinded by their ego, stumbles into your traps. Let's dive into this art of staying aloof, keeping your mind sharp and your heart unburdened, all while orchestrating the downfall of even the proudest foe. Picture this: you're navigating a high-stakes situation, maybe a workplace rivalry or a social power struggle. Your target's ego is in full bloom, puffed up from your flattery and rattled by the doubts you've planted. They're expecting you to engage, to argue, to show your hand, but you don't. Instead, you remain a shadow, calm and unreadable, pulling strings from a distance. This is detachment, not indifference, but a deliberate choice to keep your emotions out of the game. Machiavelli knew that those who let feelings cloud their judgment become predictable, manipulable. By staying detached, you hold the reins, steering the situation without ever being seen. Let's break it down. Detachment is your shield and your sword. It's the ability to observe your target's ego, its boasts, its insecurities, without letting their behavior pull you in. Say you're dealing with a colleague who thrives on drama, always trying to drag you into their orbit with provocations or bids for attention. Your instinct might be to react, to match their energy or push back. Don't. Instead, offer a nod, a faint smile, and let their words hang in the air. Your silence isn't weakness, it's power. It says you're above their game, unbothered by their need for validation. They'll push harder, reveal more, and hand you the keys to their ego without realizing it. Machiavelli would tell you that emotions are chains. When you care too much about being liked, about winning every argument, you give your target leverage. Detachment cuts those chains. Imagine a boss who's used to everyone scrambling to please them. You've flattered them, questioned them subtly, and now They're looking to you for approval or a fight. Give them neither. Respond with measured words. That's an interesting approach. Let's see how it plays out. You're not committing, not opposing, just watching. They'll feel the void of your disengagement, and their ego, hungry for reaction, will start to falter. You're in control because you're not playing their game, you're playing yours. Let's take it to a social scene. You're at a gathering and someone's holding court, their ego demanding every eye in the room. They try to pull you in, maybe with a jab disguised as a joke or a challenge to one-up their story. The crowd expects you to bite, but you don't. You might say, "That's quite a tale," and shift the conversation elsewhere, your tone neutral, your face unreadable. They're left grasping for the spotlight you've quietly taken away. This is detachment in action. You're not drawn into their need for validation, and that unsettles them more than any argument could. Their ego starts to crack, not because you attacked, but because you refuse to fuel it. The key here is discipline. Detachment doesn't mean you're cold or robotic. It means you're strategic. You feel the emotions, but you don't let them steer you. Think of it like a general watching a battle from a hilltop. The chaos below doesn't sway you, it informs you. You see your target's ego for what it is, a machine driven by pride and fear, and you choose when and how to engage. Maybe you offer a compliment, but it's calculated, not heartfelt. Maybe you stay silent when they expect praise, letting their insecurity fill the gap. Every move is deliberate, and none of it costs you emotionally. This approach gives you clarity. When you're not caught up in the heat of the moment, you can see the bigger picture. You notice the patterns in your target's behavior, the way they fish for compliments, the way they lash out when ignored. These are the levers you pull, but only if you stay detached enough to see them. Let's say you're in a negotiation with someone who's all bluster, their ego demanding they dominate the table. Instead of matching their intensity, you lean back, listen, and let them talk themselves into a corner. That's a bold stance. You might say your tone neutral. They'll keep going, overreaching, revealing weaknesses you'd never see if you were caught up in the fray. This is the power of detachment. It keeps you one step ahead. While your target's ego drives them to seek approval or avoid shame, you're free to think strategically. You're not swayed by their taunts or charmed by their charisma. You're the one who decides the tempo of the game. And the best part, they'll never see you coming. To them, you're just a bystander, maybe even a friend. But in reality, you're the one shaping their downfall, all because you've mastered the art of staying untangled. Welcome back, my cunning strategists, to the final masterstroke in our Machiavellian quest to dismantle the ego. You've learned to see its cracks, inflate it with flattery, sow doubt, and stay detached like a shadow pulling strings. Now we arrive at the fifth key, exploiting predictable human nature. This is where you wield the ultimate weapon, your understanding of the primal instincts that drive every ego: pride, envy, and fear. Niccolò Machiavelli knew that people are not the complex mysteries they believe themselves to be. Their behaviors follow patterns as old as time, and once you master these, you can unravel any ego with the precision of a chess grandmaster. Let's dive into this art of turning human predictability into your greatest ally, engaging your target's deepest impulses while keeping them oblivious to your control. Imagine you're facing someone whose ego dominates every room they enter. They boast, they preen, they demand attention. On the surface, they seem unique, but peel back the layers, and you'll find they're dancing to a tune as old as humanity itself. Pride makes them crave the spotlight. Envy makes them bristle when others shine. Fear makes them cling to their image like a lifeline. These aren't quirks, they're universal. Machiavelli's genius was in seeing that human nature is a script, and if you know the lines, you can direct the play. Your job is to read your target's ego like a book, anticipate their moves, and use their predictability to steer them toward their own undoing. Let's set the scene. You're dealing with a coworker who's always angling for the top spot. Their ego, a neon sign, flashing, "Look at me." They interrupt, they take credit, they can't stand being outdone. Sound familiar? That's because their behavior isn't special, it's textbook. Pride drives them to boast, but it also makes them desperate for validation. You can use that. Drop a casual remark like, "Your work on that project was impressive, everyone's talking about it." Their pride swells, and they lean in, hungry for more. But pride is a trap. It makes them blind to subtlety, eager to prove themselves, and that's where you start pulling the strings. Now, let's talk envy. It's the silent poison in every ego. Your target might smile, but inside, they're measuring themselves against everyone else. Use this to your advantage. In a meeting, you might say, "I was just chatting with Lisa, and her approach to this problem was so creative." It's innocent enough, but to your target, it's a spark. They'll wonder why you're praising someone else, and their envy will push them to overcompensate. Maybe they'll pitch a bold idea to reclaim the spotlight, or maybe they'll slip up trying to one-up their rival. Either way, you've nudged them into a move they didn't choose for themselves. You're not fighting them, you're letting their own nature do the work. Fear is the third lever, and it's the most powerful. Every ego, no matter how grand, is haunted by the fear of being exposed, found out as less than they claim. You've seen it, the way someone's voice tightens when their work is questioned, or how they deflect criticism with a laugh that's just a bit too loud. This is your opening. You don't need to accuse them outright. Machiavelli would call that clumsy. Instead, you hint at exposure. "I heard some feedback about your last presentation." You might say, keeping your tone vague, "but I'm sure it's nothing you can't handle." Their fear kicks in, and suddenly they're scrambling to prove themselves, revealing cracks you can widen later. Let's take this to a social setting. Picture a friend who's always the center of attention, their ego thriving on being the funniest, the smartest, the best. They're predictable. They'll jump at any chance to shine, sulk when overshadowed, and panic at the thought of looking foolish. You can play this like a fiddle. Compliment someone else in their presence, maybe saying, "Wow, Alex's story was hilarious. Did you hear it?" Their envy flares, and they'll rush to tell a bigger story, maybe stretching the truth or overreaching. Or to tap their fear, you might say, "I heard someone mention your name in passing, something about that deal you were working on." It's vague, but it's enough to make them sweat, wondering what was said and who said it. The beauty of exploiting human nature is that it's effortless once you see the patterns. Pride makes them chase approval, so you dangle it just out of reach. Envy makes them compete, so you set up comparisons that unsettle them. Fear makes them defensive, so you hint at threats they can't ignore. You're not inventing these impulses. They're already there, hardwired into every ego. Your job is to activate them like pressing buttons on a machine, and the best part, your target will never suspect you. They're too busy battling their own pride, envy, and fear to see the strategist behind the curtain. This is where you become unstoppable. By understanding these universal drives, you can predict how any ego will react. That coworker will always take the bait of praise. That friend will always bristle at a rival's success. That boss will always fear being seen as less than perfect. You don't need to force anything, you just set the stage and let human nature take its course. And so, cunning strategists, we draw the curtain on our masterclass in dismantling the ego. You've walked the shadowed path of Niccolò Machiavelli, learning to see the ego not as a fortress, but as a fragile web of pride, envy, and fear. You've mastered the art of spotting its weaknesses, inflating it with flattery, sowing doubt, staying detached, and exploiting the predictable rhythms of human nature. Each step has armed you with the tools to unravel even the most towering sense of self, turning arrogance into vulnerability with the precision of a chess grandmaster. But heed this final counsel from Machiavelli's wisdom. Wield these powers with subtlety, for the greatest victories are those where your hand remains unseen. Go forth, my pupils, and let the world bend to your quiet command.